Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 3 of Crusading for a Turnabout. Let's just get right back into this. I don't really have anything to say that I didn't at the end of the last video, and let's see what happens.
Prosecutor Luna, do you have an explanation for this? This completely overturns your entire case!
Quite literally, in fact.
You weren't fazed by it?
I'm afraid not, Your Honor. Sorry to disappoint you.
So then, do you have an explanation for this after all?
Perhaps we should allow the one who brought this to our attention an opportunity to explain it first.
Me?
Who else?
Well,
Come on, Athena.
I don't know. I just pointed out the contradiction. I hadn't really thought about what it means yet.
Well, one thing it could mean, Prosecutor Luna, is that the police made a mistake when they were outlining the body.
I assure you, no mistakes were made. I saw to the removal of the body myself. The tape outline was made around the body just before it was removed. Private Eye can confirm this, as he was also there at the time.
Yes. The tape was laid down before the body was moved. There's no chance it was a mistake on our part.
If that's the case, then this contradiction eliminates the possibility of this being an accidental killing. The victim couldn't have fallen on something if he ended up with his stabbed side facing towards the sky.
Indeed.
He could have,
And what
actually.
else?
Well...
Oh, I think I've got it. It would also mean that the body itself had to have been moved, right?
How so?
If the side of his body that was hit somehow ended up facing the ground, it would mean that whoever killed him must have moved the body from somewhere else and placed it down incorrectly. I don't know if that was by accident or on purpose, but the body had to have been moved.
And why couldn't the explanation be as simple as the victim himself having rolled over after being hit? Or having his feet swept out from under him, causing him to fall on his left side?
Because if he really did land on his right side after being hit, and then rolled over, he would have ended up facing away from his attacker, regardless of which direction he rolled. I doubt he would have wanted to let them out of his sight.
True.
As for why the assailant couldn't have swept out his knees, the autopsy report doesn't mention anything about the victim's knees being injured. Even if they were weak at the time, some bruise or mark would have been left behind if they were hit with enough force to topple him over.
There's no doubt that the victim must have fallen over when he was hit. His legs were far too weak to support him after suffering the blow to his side.
I still think he just fell into the gorge and then was brought up the stairs.
How's that for an answer,
put at the end of the
Prosecutor Luna?
bridge.
The victim's body was moved after he was killed. That's the only way he could have ended up being found with the left side of his body facing the ground.
The only way? Are you sure about that?
Shouldn't say things like that.
Caramba. What now?
I think you are forgetting one last possibility.
And what would that be, Prosecutor Luna?
First, let's review what we've uncovered so far. We know that the victim was struck on his left side, which undoubtedly caused him to fall on his right side. However, when the body was discovered, the victim was found to have fallen on his left side. Between the time the victim fell over and the time the body was discovered, the victim must have moved to account for this change in positioning.
Exactly. The culprit, after killing the victim,
That's not what she
moved
said.
the body.
That's not necessarily the case, Golden Pixie.
What
Why
do
do
you
you
mean?
keep calling her that?
Undoubtedly, the victim was knocked over after he was hit. But who's to say that's also when he died?
That's a fair point.
You mean?
Yes, I do. The victim was not stabbed when he was knocked to the ground. Instead, after he was knocked over, he managed to stand himself back up. After an unspecified amount of time, he was then stabbed in the right temple, which caused him to fall over onto his left side.
That's a fair point.
Order! Order in the court! After hearing both the prosecution and defense's claims, I believe I must side with the prosecution's stance.
What? But why?
Your theory of the body being moved, while plausible, simply lacks enough evidence to back it up, and leaves too many questions unanswered. If the body was moved, who moved it, Why? And from where?
Those are all, really good questions, Your Honor.
Oh,
And if we knew the
why,
answers to them,
thank
we
you,
wouldn't be
Miss
here.
Sykes. I have been doing this for quite some time, you know.
If you wish to pursue the theory of the body having been moved, you'll need to first disprove that he was killed at the castle ruins. All of the evidence presented in the trial so far points towards the likelihood of the murder occurring there. Furthermore, nothing was missing from the crime scene to suggest that the murder may have occurred
It wasn't
elsewhere.
Royal Order's blood.
Right, defense?
There it is again. She's hinting at something. What
Nightmare
does she
Moon
want me to
statue, but-
see? Something missing from the crime scene? Everything's here, isn't it? The scooter that stabbed the victim, the body itself, the... Wait a second. The body that was stabbed is there, but there's something else that should be there but isn't. This is it! Your Honor, the defense has evidence to counter the prosecution's claims.
Then please show it to us, Miss Sykes.
Look at this photo one more time.
The body doesn't have a
There's a
horn.
grave contradiction contained within it.
A contradiction? Where?
Right here, Your Honor. Take that! Look at the area near the head of the victim. If we go by the prosecution's theory,
Blood.
then the victim would have fallen in the place he was stabbed. However, if that was the case, then there should be a pool of blood around the victim's head.
Yes, there should be.
But looking at this picture, what do you see?
None.
There's no blood at all.
And
That's a very good point.
precisely the significant contradiction in that photo, Your Honor. An area that should be caked in blood has no trace of it whatsoever. If the crime scene lacks even a drop of blood to speak of, that casts significant doubt over whether the victim was stabbed there at all.
Indeed it does, Miss Sykes.
So, how could this be the case, you might ask? The answer is obvious. The victim's body was moved from somewhere else to the castle ruins. That's the only possibility.
Interesting claim, Golden Pixie. And you sounded so triumphant while making it, too. It's a shame that it's completely flawed.
Flawed? How?
True, there doesn't appear to be any blood on the scene right now. But once I bring my next witness to the stand, that tune of yours will surely change.
This other witness.
Zakora,
Time to see
isn't
if
it?
it's who I think it is.
Very well. Detective, you may leave the stand, but please remain in the courtroom. We may need your opinion on other matters as they come up.
Of course, my lord.
Now then, let the prosecution's next witness take the stand.
Is it Zakora? Yep. This should be interesting.
Witness, please state your name and occupation for the record.
My name is Zakora, an apothecary. I make my home in the Ever.3.
You live in the Ever.3 forest?
You're a zebra?
Oh, right. I guess I forgot to mention that, didn't I?
You and Apple Bloom both.
And you say you're an apothecary?
Yes, Your Honor, I am indeed. Crafting potions is my creed. The forest creatures are bizarre, but their wonders are unmatched by far.
It's a very good Zakora.
Interesting.
I just noticed that she's rhyming. Oh boy. I really hope that this doesn't mean what I think it might.
Let's get back on topic, shall we? Witness, is it true that, on the night of the murder, you were the one who discovered and reported the victim's body?
Yes, quite sadly this is true. It was a scene most gruesome too.
Then please, give us your testimony in relation to this gruesome discovery.
Of course, Your Honor, I shall speak. I'm sorry for this tale is bleak. That evening, I was tending to the plants near my home. 2 little ponies passed, heading towards the castle dome. For a while I waited, but return they did not, so I chose to head home at an agile trot. But soon I heard a strange far-off sound. I ran to where those ponies were bound. On my way, a small shadow my eyes did track, but it jumped away before I could react. Upon arrival, what met my gaze I'll not forget for all my days. A pony's body, still with blood around his head, turning earth to mud. Once I was sure that he was dead, to the police I quickly fled.
Can life cut me a break already? It's hard enough sifting through testimonies without having to decipher them first.
It must have been horrifying to see a dead body that night. But if the Everfree Forest is as dangerous as you say it is, well, wouldn't bodies be a common sight?
Most creatures are clean with the food they hunt, but a corpse in the open has a prize, to be blunt.
You saw blood on the ground around the body?
Of all the life that he had bled, a ring of red lay around his head.
Objection! That's impossible. We checked the area ourselves. Even this photograph shows there was no traces of blood. Your testimony is completely contradictory.
Do not point your rage at me. I have told you all I've seen.
Perhaps I can shed some light on this matter.
Do you have something that can explain this contradiction, Prosecutor Luna?
Of course, Your Honor. I'd look rather silly if I didn't.
Very well. Please explain for us.
As was just stated, this witness was the one who reported the body to the police. She accompanied them to the crime scene, and they found it in exactly the same state as she just described, the victim lying in a pool of his own blood. I have here a photograph of that very scene.
Cheese-ums crispy.
You're right. The victim does appear to be lying in a pool of blood.
But why
That
is it
is
gone the next day?
such a gruesome
That
photograph.
will come
Goddamn.
Soon enough. First, the prosecution would like to submit this evidence to the court, along with this photograph.
Oh,
And what is this?
the third
It's a
cape.
cape, Your Honor. The emblem on it denotes it as belonging to the Cutie Mark Crusaders, the group of which the defendant, Scootaloo, is a member.
That must be the third cape that Private Eye said the police had taken for examination.
As you can see in this earlier photograph, 2 more of these capes, as well as the fabric used to line their undersides, laid in this wagon attached to the scooter. It likely goes without saying, but this wagon also belongs to Scootaloo.
Great Wickering Stallions! Just what were the defendants up to in that forest?
We'll cover that in a moment. For now, I would like to draw further attention to this cape here. Upon testing it, we found that it was absolutely drenched in the victim's blood. What?
The cape was covered in blood?
You mean someone tried to clean up the crime scene?
I can't imagine that to be the case. Going by where this cape was found, I'd say there's another more likely possibility.
Where was it found?
This cape was discovered underneath the victim's body, specifically under his head.
You mean that pool of blood Zecora saw?
It appears as though the little golden pixie has figured
It wasn't
out.
blood.
When the police went to examine the blood, they discovered that it wasn't blood at all. It was actually this cape right here.
Soaked up all the blood.
She was on the wrong track all along.
Looks like it. Yup.
Now do you
Shut up, Big Mac.
understand, Defense. When the victim fell to the ground after being stabbed, he must have fallen on top of this cape. Any blood that seeped from his wound would have trailed down his face and been absorbed by the cloth. When the witness came across it, she mistook the cape for blood due to its red color. The fact that there was no blood at the scene is completely irrelevant. After all, it was the police themselves who removed it.
No! This can't be right.
Dragging this on like this for those two children is just cruel. Even if they're guilty, why can't the lawyers see that?
Order! Order! My word! It seems as if the defense's argument has been completely overturned.
Indeed it has, Your Honor. Despite what they claimed, it's clear that the body was never moved. The scene of the crime was undoubtedly at the foot of the bridge. The blood on this cape proves it. And, as luck would have it, I have one more piece of information that will crush the defense's rebuttal once and for all.
No, please, no more.
Upon examining the area where the cape lay, thanks to forensic spell testing, we discovered traces of blood underneath the area around the victim's head.
Really?
It seems as if the cape absorbed more blood than it could handle, and some of it leaked through to the ground below. Further testing of this blood revealed that it belonged to the victim. Your Honor, I submit to you the photo of the victim's body, as well as the blood-stained cape as evidence.
Very well. The court accepts them. Defense, care to share your thoughts on the matter?
Not if I don't want to get held in contempt of court.
It seems the Golden Pixie has been rendered speechless in the face of such irrefutable evidence.
Just ignore her. Ignore everyone, okay? I'm not gonna lose. Time to get my brain in gear. There has to be something off in her theory. Luna's saying that the body was never moved. The reason there was no blood at the scene is because it was absorbed by the cape. In that case, the victim would have stood up after being knocked over by turning. Afterwards, Scootaloo hit him in the head with the scooter, which knocked him to the ground again. Is there anything wrong with that series of events?
How did Scootaloo hit him with the scooter?
Wait a second. If the victim was standing up when he was stabbed,
Ah!
then
Luna
wouldn't it
pointed
be
that out
impossible
herself.
for-
Miss Sykes! Do you, or do you not, have any objections to the prosecutor's theory?
Hell yes.
You bet I do.
Feigning confidence will get you nowhere, defense.
Objection! Your Honor, the defense would like to point out a flaw in the prosecution's theory.
Then get on with it!
Yes, Your Honor. The issue has to do with the victim's fatal stab wound being inflicted while the victim was standing upright. I would think stabbing an adult at such a height would be nearly impossible for a child. Correct?
Objection! You forget that the owner of that scooter is a Pegasus. What's stopping them from simply
Scootaloo can't
flying
fly.
up and stabbing him that way?
Funny you should mention that. I heard something from the defendant in question yesterday that clears up this matter. Namely, the fact that Miss Scootaloo can't fly.
What? Order! Order! Prosecutor Luna, is this true? If Miss Scootaloo can't fly, then there's no way she could have stabbed a stallion in the head while he was standing.
Of course she couldn't.
Can I take you by surprise at least once in this trial?
What the defense has said is absolutely true. I have the medical report from Scootaloo's doctor right here. Contrary to Pegasus fillies her age, her wings haven't fully developed yet, and thus, she cannot fly.
But if you knew that, then why were you arguing that she could have stabbed somewhere she couldn't even reach?
Now, when did I ever claim that? All I ever claimed was that some pony stabbed him whilst he was standing upright. If it was impossible for Scootaloo to have done so, then that leaves only one option, doesn't
It was
it?
someone else.
Uh-oh.
Turning Page is a talented unicorn for his age, and levitation is a relatively simple spell to learn.
But levitating an
even for
entire
colts and fillies.
an entire
I'm
pony?
sure he'd have no problem levitating the scooter up to his father's head and stabbing him with it.
Objection! Princess Luna, if you choose to claim that, then Scootaloo would have done nothing wrong. Am I right?
Princess Twilight, please explain what you mean.
It's simple, Your Honor. If Turning Page was the one who assaulted his father, and then proceeded to stab him in the head with the scooter, then Scootaloo would be completely innocent, nothing but a bystander at most. Am I right, Princess Luna?
We shall see.
Why are you pushing
First,
that so hard?
I think it's time for the defense's cross-examination of our witness. We've been putting that off for long enough now.
Oh, yeah. I kind of forgot that Zecora was even here.
Very well. Let us begin the cross-examination.
That evening, I was tending to the plants near my home.
Hold it! You were tending to plants?
Yes, my plants must grow up strong, lest the potion turn out wrong.
Including that poison joke in front of your home?
Yes, they're blooming but not quite grown, since only recently they were sown.
Are these plants of yours hard to find?
Many flowers around my home can't grow without the forest gnome. They're so rare that to meet my needs, I search the forest for their seeds. I tend to them both day and night, and harvest them when the time is right. But poison joke differs. It's often seen in a sproul, but at this time of year, it hardly grows at all.
So you scour the forest for plants. Did you happen to do that on the day of the murder?
I
Hardly
searched quite
found it
long
all.
that day. From dawn to dusk, I was away. When I got home with the seeds I sought, I tended to my garden plot.
Did you happen to visit the castle of the two sisters that day?
Yes, for along that castle's cliffside, sometimes rare flowers peek and hide. Sadly, when my search was done, I left without finding a single one.
Just to confirm, the body didn't happen to be at the foot of the bridge at that time, did it?
I understand what you mean to say, but no, the body wasn't there that day.
We already know when the victim died. It was long after this witness was scouring the area for plants. Stop wasting our time with these pointless questions and move on.
Well, at least I got some information. Not exactly sure how helpful it was,
It
though.
was rather helpful, though. How did he stumble into Poison Joke? Natural growth is limited this
Please,
time of year.
continue, witness.
He had to have gone
Two
to a
little
cut.
ponies passed, heading towards the castle dome.
Hold it! Did you happen to see who they were?
Of the colt I had no clue, but the filly was Miss Scootaloo.
So you saw the children walking through the forest that night?
It surely was a curious sight, two foals traveling solo that night. The forest danger is well known, so I thought, what are they doing alone?
They were going to settle the blackmail with Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon. But I can't bring that up yet. It'll just be rejected outright.
These two ponies. Was there anything about them that caught your eye?
Scootaloo looked frightened, but that wasn't so strange. The forest scares any pony of any age. The colt was holding something thick, but not with his hooves, but with magic.
And what was that?
It was a bolt of fabric, rolled. The moonlight showed that it was gold.
That checks out with what Scootaloo said yesterday. How Turning Page offered to carry it for her just in case.
This matches what we found at the crime scene, as there was a roll of golden silk left behind in the wagon.
It would seem that way.
He also carried a weapon, a sword of solid wood. Given where they were going, I thought this was good.
And I'm assuming this sword was in one piece. Am I right?
Indeed, there wasn't a single crack. The sword appeared fully intact.
So the defendant's sword really was whole while heading to the scene.
And it then broke when he used it to attack the victim.
Indeed. That's seeming more and more likely.
At some point here, I need to counter with how the sword really broke. But I'm still missing the evidence to support Turning's version of events. One way or another, I'm going to have to find it soon.
Witness, please continue your testimony.
For a while I waited, but return they did not, so I chose to head home at an agile trot.
Hold it! You just stood on the path and waited?
It would not have done to stand and wait, for time has an unchanging gait. Along the central path nearby, some plants were quite nearly bone dry. These I tended by the light of the moon, expecting the foals to come back soon.
How long were you waiting for them?
I worked from 9:45 to about 10:10, so a half hour had nearly passed by then.
And you just stood there, taking care of plants the whole time? Weren't you worried about two kids going so far into the forest by themselves?
Of course I was! Who wouldn't be? After all, they were in the Ep.3. But for all that time there was no sound, nor any sign that they were found. On the path I kept one eye, in case they returned or another passed by.
I guess no one ever came then?
No one did, neither pony nor foal. I finished my work without seeing a soul. So I decided to head home and rest, until I heard something that brought dread to my chest.
The
But
Timberwolf.
soon I heard a strange far-off sound. I ran to where those ponies were bound.
Hold it! Noise?
It sounded unlike anything I'd ever heard. Not a bear, manticore, wolf, or bird. I could hear it echo around, a strangely loud metallic sound.
You mean like a clang?
It was a particular tone to hear, though clang does suit well with what reached my ear.
This again? First a fabric roll and now a clang? Any other similarities to the case from 2 days ago I should know about? Do you know when you heard this clang?
As soon as I heard it, I checked the time. It was 10:15 right on the dime.
And do you know where it came from?
I know not much to my shame. I could not tell from where it came. I remembered where the children were headed. The sound coming from there was a thought I dreaded.
So, what did you do then?
I made up my mind to find the foals. Reaching and protecting them were my goals. That plan was briefly sent awry when something weird caught
Something
my
in the
eye.
bushes.
On my way, a small shadow my eyes did track, but it jumped away before I could react.
Hold it! A small shadow?
I wish I could describe it more than just weird, but it left as soon as it had appeared. Still, it was rather odd to me, so I included it with my testimony.
Do you know when and where you saw this shadow?
5 minutes after would be the when, so I'd wager it was 10:20 then. Where is difficult, I must confess, as Ep.3 has no address.
Here, witness. Point it out on this diagram.
You have my thanks, Princess Luna. Now let me fill this lacuna. Ah, yes, it was this spot right here. Or, at least, someplace near.
So just on the path?
I thought we were on the path towards collision, but then it jumped out of my line of vision.
For those
Some pony
unaware,
running,
the Everfree Forest is
something.
notorious for being absolutely pitch black at night.
some
The
pony
intense tree cover prevents
running down
most
the path
forms of light
towards
from
her.
reaching the forest floor. However, this incident occurred on the night of a full moon, so sunlight was able to illuminate the areas that lacked direct cover from trees. Unfortunately, the rest of the forest remained as pitch black as one would expect it to be.
Was there any detail about the shadow you could make out at all? Shape? Size? Anything?
Even in darkness, there was one distinct feature. At the very least, it seemed like a small creature.
Small?
Hole.
Like a child?
That's what I thought after what I'd seen. I looked for them, seeing only the forest green. I tried calling out, hoping they would return, but if they had responded, I could not discern. Perhaps they cared not to heed me well, or perhaps my voice drowned under the howling swell.
Howling?
Yes, and quite loudly, for one main reason. 'Tis now the Timberwolves' hunting season. Whenever they are on the prowl, they raise their canine heads and howl. On that night they were easily heard, and they kept going undeterred. When they stopped, I do not know. By then I knew it was time to go.
The blood at the
What do
statue.
you think made them howl?
Who is to say? Certainly not me. Into
I
a
think we need to
Timberwolf's
find
mind I
Diamond
cannot
and
see.
Silverspoon.
As I have told you, it's their hunting season. But truthfully, it could be for any reason.
Let's focus on what we can answer then, shall we? Witness, what did you see once you arrived at the scene?
Upon arrival, what met my gaze I'll not forget for all my days. A pony's body, still with blood around his head, turning earth to mud.
Hold it! But it wasn't blood. It was a cape, right?
I'll admit my interpretation was flawed, but if you don't have a problem, don't needlessly prod.
You didn't check to make sure?
When I came upon the former guard of the law, his stillness shocked me, not a breath did he draw. Creeping closer to his still build, I hoped my fears would be dashed by thrills, but my suspicions proved correct, as I realized when I checked his neck. No pulse of life-giving blood I found. He was as dead as winter's ground.
And what did you do after that?
That gruesome discovery sent me reeling and gave me a terrible, sickening feeling.
Alright, we're going to stop this one here. Been going for the correct amount of time. Things are starting to get interesting now, and also I'm vaguely worried about Diamond and Silverspoon now. Because there was a foal running down the path that jumped off into the woods to get away from Zecora. The Timberwolves were on the hunt, and we know that whoever the Timberwolves were chasing was cowering beside the statue, weren't they? If I can remember that opening scene correctly, they were right beside the statue and they were cowering away from it, and there was so much blood there. And we have not seen Diamond and Silverspoon yet. Every other foal that was in the forest that we know of, and even the ones that we don't know were there or not, are covered. Turning's here, all the Cutie Mark Crusaders are here, Diamond and Silverspoon are the only two we haven't seen yet in present day. I'm a little concerned at that. I've always kind of held the belief that this series would not kill off any of the main canon characters, but we don't know that. I don't think they'd go that far though. That would be really fucking dark. It is still something to be worried about though. That blood is something we need to keep in mind. So there was a clang. Probably what broke the scooter. Maybe the scooter getting thrown over the ridge. 45 minutes after he left to go into the forest. 10:10. She heard the clang. Things are getting more interesting now. Now we're starting to step into the part of this where it's starting to be more confusing and more making less, we've gotten past the point where everyone's kind of saying shit that seems like it should be obvious. Either it isn't or it is. And we're getting more into the point now where they're actually trying to figure out what happened. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought in the comments, whatever. And I will see you in the next one. Harmonia Invictus.
Open your eyes, life is all around you. Don't have to be so alone. Take a good look at this world you found and breathe, now you're finally home.